You have now entered the no friend zone. All right. Shalom, shalom, family. This is Elder Yerah, giving all praise to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to our ancestors, to Yeshua, Mashiach, and showing us how to live this life circumspectly. And I want to briefly just do a brief introduction on the subject of Amenemope or Amenemope in regards to Proverbs 22 through 24th chapters. Is there evidence of plagiarism? Is there evidence of plagiarism? My goal here is to do a comparative contextual analysis. That would be my methodology. I'm going to actually do start the full presentation tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's tomorrow, April 3rd, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're actually doing a full presentation. We're starting to get into it. I may not complete the full presentation because it is very extensive to get to the crux of the matter and really talk about what we've hearing in the community about the Kemetic influence in the Hebrew Bible, and really break that down and get into that. Shalom, Marquise, the Good Samaritan. Peace to you, family. We're going to really get into that and sort of deal with this particular subject. But right now, what I want to do is just a brief. I'm not going to be before you long. I just want to give a brief introduction as to some of the information that I'll be presenting. And so what I want to do is I want to first set this up, because what happens is in this particular conversation is that people tend to look at the surface level of the text between the instructions of Amenemope or Amenemope versus or parallel to Proverbs chapters 22 through 23 and 24 to some degree. And what we have to understand in order to get a proper context, we have to use the proper methodology, right? And really the way to get into it is to use a thematic methodology. It's showing the patterns and the context within both wisdom literatures, as well as doing a comparative contextual analysis between the two wisdom literature documents. And so we want to get into that and break it down. And choosing to do it this way, I was holding some of this information to really to debate it, but I feel like this is not something that really needs to be debated until there is a concerted effort, especially in this particular community, to really break this thing down. Hold on a second, family. So what I wanted to do is just do a brief introduction, and I'm going to get right into it. Let me turn this track down a little bit. And as I said, I'm going to be doing the full presentation. I'll get into the full presentation tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to really get into it with really depth. So let me go ahead and get into this. Let me share my screen. And deal with it here. And let's just talk about it. This is take it. So let's get into it. And again, the argument in the community, and we've heard, is actually something that's been happening for a number of years. Just let me make this screen a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can do it that way. If I can do it that way. I don't know if that actually works right. Let's see. There we go. And oftentimes, this is what's used, and it's been used over the centuries, since the early 1900s, to be more precise, that this particular piece of wisdom literature that we see, the instructions of Amenemope, that some Egyptologists have placed between, it was maybe written by Amenemope himself. Others will disagree with that. And they give it a timeline for about circa 1550 or 1500 BCE to about 1100 BCE. And some as early as late as 1000 BCE. Versus Proverbs, specifically chapters 22 to 23, and some of 24, that we, in the biblical arena, most biblical scholars attributed the writing to King Solomon. And it's usually given a chronology of about circa 1000 to 950 BCE. But this particular writing sometimes is even given as early, a later date of about circa 650 BCE for this particular writing in Proverbs. So you can already see sort of what the issue is here, and the parallels that is given, right? And we're going to take a look at that. We may not get into that tonight, but this is just a brief introduction because I really wanted to do this. There's some people that I had reached out to me, and a few others about this particular topic. And I told them that I would address it. All praises to the Most High, to the best of my knowledge and my ability, what He's given me, and from what I understand in regards to the historical facts of it, for what we actually know, right? And so I wanted to get into it a little bit. So here, again, and so most of the argument is that the instructions of Amenemope clearly predates Proverbs chapters 22, 23, and 24, which is where this argument lies, right? Is only within those particular chapters of Proverbs that have been attributed historically, I should say, who have been attributed mostly to King Solomon. But as we'll see, we'll talk about that in the writings, in the formulation of these particular chapters in Proverbs, right? Whether or not we can actually attribute this to the hand and the mind of King Solomon. So that's also one of the things we're going to get into as well. But let's deal with the issue in hand. But first, in order to really understand this, I think that we often hear it in the conscious community. They take articles and periodicals and different studies, and then they began to read them without any contextual understanding, without any knowledge, historical knowledge. They simply they play the child's game, right? What is it called? Goldfish or something like that, where you pick up you turn over all the cards and you pick up one and they try to match it with the other. So this is basically the games that you play people play when it comes to this particular understanding. So this is what I wanted to address. And again, this is just a brief introduction, so I'm not going to be before you long, maybe 20 minutes. But I want to set some things up really quickly before I go into the full presentation on tomorrow evening. Again, if you haven't liked, share, and subscribe to this channel, the Yara New Torah Movement, share, let everybody know if this is a topic. I know it's pretty hot. It's been pretty hot for a while. You don't find many people who are addressing it, Israelites, I should say, in our particular realm, in our community, to actually address it. So I'm going to get out here and I'm going to address this topic scholastically, academically, and scripturally, the best way that I possibly can, and sort of knock down some of the rhetoric that we hear that the Hebrew Bible, or even this particular portion of the Hebrew Bible of the text, the Proverbs, is actually copied or is actually taken or plagiarized from the instructions of Amenemope, right? And I believe we're going to be able to show why that's not the case, right? So I'm going to be doing that full presentation tomorrow. This is just the introduction again. But like, share, and subscribe. Let everybody know we're going to be talking about this. I will open up the floor a little bit on tomorrow after I've done most of the presentation for those who have questions. But we're going to get the full information out. I'm just going to do this in the lecture series. So that's it. So let's get into it, right? Amenemope and Proverbs. This is the introduction, right? It says there has been a long-standing debate among scholars about the relationship between the book of Proverbs and the Bible in ancient Egyptian texts, known as the instructions of Amenemope. The instructions of Amenemope, I should say, is a collection of moral and ethical teachings that was written in Egypt during the New Kingdom period, sometime between the 16th and 11th centuries BCE. Some scholars believe that the author of the book of Proverbs was influenced by the instructions of Amenemope and may have borrowed, right, some of its teachings. However, and this is the crux of my argument into the introduction to this and going into my presentation tomorrow evening. However, there is no conclusive evidence to support this theory. And again, I've been talking about this, and this no fringe zone series of teachings that I'm going to be doing. These fringe scholarships, they really have no evidence to back up their claims when they make these absolute statements that the Bible is plagiarized, or it's certain, or the instructions of Amenemope were plagiarized by a Hebrew scribe, and this is how we see the similarities, or this is how we see it in the book of Proverbs, right? These are all theories. They're all theories. Every scholar, biblical and non-biblical, any secular scholar will tell you this is simply a theory in which you cannot make a claim or base a fact upon, right? So it says there is no conclusive evidence to support this theory, and many scholars believe that any similarities between the two works are simply the result of similar cultural and intellectual backgrounds. And I want people to really get that last two parts of what I read, that these two works are simply the result of similar cultural, not the same, but similar cultural and intellectual backgrounds, right? So we're talking about wisdom literature. Wisdom literature, or wisdom in and of itself, is not simply relegated to ancient Kemet. It's not simply relegated to the Sumerian culture or the Akkadian culture or any culture that comes out of the ancient Near East, which includes Kemet, right? So when we talk about these wisdom literatures, these texts that propagate wisdom, these things may have similar cultural and intellectual backgrounds, right? But that doesn't mean they are the same. That doesn't mean that they're borrowed. And it definitely doesn't mean that it's copied, nor clearly doesn't mean that it's stolen, which is the most ignorant argument that I've ever heard. So these are the things that we have to take into account. And we're going to address this when it comes to this particular argument. Let's continue. Furthermore, there are significant differences between the two works. The instructions of Amenemope is written in a different style. That's the first thing people need to understand. When you talk about plagiarism, right? Now, there are many different forms of plagiarism, and we're going to get into that as well. But one aspect of plagiarism that we can take off the table right away, and that's a direct copy, a word for word copy. That's plagiarizing. The instructions of Amenemope in Proverbs chapters 22 to 23 to 24 is not a direct word for word copy. So we can take that definition of plagiarism off of the table. We can't even say that it's copy, because copy means that there is a mirror image. It's a mirror image. Put it to you like this. A lot of people want to make the claim that somehow the instructions of Amenemope found its way intact. And I heard one brother give a source, I believe it was Shaka Almost, Almost, specifically stated that there was an Aramaic text somewhere, possibly an Aramaic text or Aramaic copy of the instructions of Amenemope, which found its way into the book of Proverbs. So now we have this mysterious Aramaic text that no one's ever seen, no one's ever read, no one's ever dated, right? This mysterious Aramaic text of the instructions of Amenemope. There's no evidence for it, but he reads us an article from the Oriental Institute in Ukraine. I believe I said that wrong, in Crimea, that uses that actual statement as the basis of their argument as to how the instructions of Amenemope found itself into the book of Proverbs in chapters 22, 23, and 24. That there must have been, or there's a high probability that there was an Aramaic copy of the instructions of Amenemope. This is all theory. They've never produced a copy of an Aramaic text of Amenemope dating back to the time of Solomon, circa 1950, 980 so BCE. Not an Aramaic text. You can't date it back to 1550 BCE, the time that Amenemope would have lived, up until some say 1100 to 1000 BCE. There's no evidence of it. It's just all theory. It's all theory. But we're going to get even deeper into that. We're going to get even deeper into it because we're going to show the origins of how this whole narrative even came about. And this is what you've never heard. So tomorrow, 9 p.m. on this channel, we're going to get into the origins of where this argument began. And we're going to show you why this entire argument should be completely disavowed and dismissed, like many scholars, true scholars, have. Right? So, again, furthermore, there are significant differences between the two works. The instructions of Amenemope is written in a different style and tone than the book of Proverbs. That's important because if it was a complete copy of plagiarized, a word for word copy, then the tone should have been the same. The rhetoric should be the same. Even the style should be the same. It should be a mirror copy, a mirror image, a mirrored translation, right? And we know that it's not very difficult to have a mirrored image of something written in a Kemetic, Demotic, or heretic text, right? In ancient Egypt, because the what they call Paleo-Hebrew, right, or the Phoenician in Phoenicia, these are child languages. Most scholars would say, most linguists would tell you. So translation shouldn't be that difficult. So it shouldn't be that difficult if it was completely copied to show the same style and give the same tone. It shouldn't be that difficult to see that. But they are completely different in style and tone. And its teachings are rooted in Egyptian culture and religion, while the book of Proverbs is firmly rooted in what I call Afro-Hebraic tradition. You won't see the same cultural context in the two writings, in the two instructions. You won't see the same cultural context. And we talked about this earlier, about similar cultural and intellectual backgrounds. They don't mean the same. So these things that we have to take into account when we're studying this subject. And for those who simply are looking to dismiss or discredit the Hebraic Bible, the Hebrew text, and the wisdom that's found within it, they'll make these surface level elementary arguments. Very sloppily, I might add. With no real in-depth study. But these are great researchers and teachers and college teachers, whatever, man. Whatever. None of that translates into you not being a liar. Or you're not understanding what you're reading. None of that helps your confirmation bias. None of it. So I get a kick out of a lot of these people that I've been hearing, right? That do these things a lot. Jababel Saze, right? Love to appeal to their own authority, which is a logical fallacy in and of itself. Oh, because I teach a class, I'm right. Because I have this many years in studying this the wrong way, I have a right to interpret the text the way I choose to. Liar. So we have to look, we have to pay more close attention and do more in-depth study and pay attention to those who are actually doing the work, right? In summary, while there are some similarities between the instructions of Amenemope and the book of Proverbs, there is not enough evidence to suggest that the authors of the book of Proverbs plagiarized from the ancient Egyptian text. And that's just the fact. That's just a fact. Ain't no smoking gun. Ain't none of that. You ain't gonna find nobody that says, yeah, we copied from it. None of that stuff exists. Your eyes aren't deceiving you because there's not a word for word copy. It's not a direct plagiarism. It's not a direct copy. These are both wisdom texts, wisdom literature. Simple as that. Speaking of wisdom literature is a genre of literature that is characterized by its focus on offering practical guidance and ethical advice for living a good and successful life. Every culture has it. Every culture has their own wisdom literature. Many cultures have produced wisdom literature throughout history, and these works often share common themes and teachings. The ancient Egyptian text known as the Instructions of Amenemope is one example of wisdom literature that has been compared to other works in this genre. And I'm going to get into that a little bit tomorrow in the presentation, if I can get to that point, that you'll see that there are older wisdom texts other than the Instructions of Amenemope that basically have the same similar sayings. And they're older than the Instructions of Amenemope. Actually, the Instructions of Amenemope is actually one of the latest when it talks about the instructions of wisdom in wisdom literature coming out of the ancient Near East. So we have to keep in mind that these things have similar cultural backgrounds, and that these things also have a place in intellectual background. Wisdom is passed down from generation to generation. Even here in America, a lot of things we say, they're Greek proverbs we speak, they're African proverbs that we use. And so we have to understand that these things are not alienated. These wisdom texts, they're not alienated to just ancient Kemet. We have wisdom texts from Samaria, from different time periods, different dynasties. The Instructions of Amenemope is a collection of moral and ethical teachings that was written in Egypt during the New Kingdom period, sometime between 1611 BC. It offers guidance on a wide range of topics, including the importance of wisdom, honesty, and self-control. Many of his teachings are similar to those found in other works of wisdom literature, including the Book of Proverbs and the Bible. Like other works of wisdom literature, the Instructions of Amenemope emphasizes the importance of living a virtuous life and offers practical advice for achieving this goal. It emphasizes the importance of humility, honesty, and self-discipline, and encourages readers to seek wisdom and to live in harmony with others. Despite its similarities to other works of wisdom literature, the Instructions of Amenemope is also unique in many ways. It reflects the values and beliefs of ancient Egyptian culture. No problem with that. And its teachings are rooted in Egyptian religion and mythology. That's another flag there, family. When you're doing the comparison between the two texts, the Instructions of Amenemope is rooted in Egyptian religion and mythology. It also uses a distinctive literary style that is characterized by its use of metaphors and poetic language. It's a distinctive writing style that's only used by the people of ancient Kemet at that particular time. So it's very distinctive. So when you look at the book of Proverbs, chapters 22 verses chapters 24, you won't see that style. So you can't claim a direct copy. You can't claim it's being plagiarized. To that degree, you can't do it that way. And as I said before, there are different areas of plagiarism, and I'm going to touch on all of those in my presentation tomorrow at 9 p.m. on this channel, Eastern Standard Time. In summary, the Instructions of Amenemope is an important example of wisdom literature that shares many similarities with other works in this genre. However, it is also unique in many ways and reflects the values and beliefs of the ancient Egyptian culture. You won't find that in Proverbs chapters 22 to 23 that many claim is plagiarized. You won't find any Egyptian culture there. Not in the writing style, as we see the Instructions of Amenemope is written in a distinctive writing style and with this different literary art, distinctive, literary art than what we see when we do a comparative contextual analysis with Proverbs 22, 23, and 24. Because that's the debate at hand. It's not even the entire book of Proverbs. Because you have some scholars that'll tell you that at the beginning of the Proverbs, I believe the first, second, and third chapters have a more ancient Near Eastern, more Akkadian type rhetoric or a literary trope to it. So all of this stuff is speculation. There's no conclusive evidence, right? We're going to deal with some other things. We dealt with wisdom literature, right? We dealt with the distinctiveness of the Instructions of Amenemope versus Proverbs 22, 23, and 24. Now we're going to deal with what we have an understanding of cultural memory. When we're talking about things taken from one, we see things similar in one text, in one ancient text, and we find it in another ancient text, or similar. Cultural memory in the ancient Near East refers to the shared knowledge, ideas, and beliefs that were passed down through generations in the various civilizations that once thrived in the region. The ancient Near East encompasses modern-day Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and parts of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Syria. This region is often referred to as the cradle of civilization because it was home to some of the world's earliest urban societies, including the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Hittites, the Elamites, the Canaanites, and among others. The ancient Near East and parts of ancient Kemet are replete with artifacts and writings, cuneiform structures from all of these different societies and civilizations of people. We're talking about intellectual background and cultural similarities. But none will say none of these societies that I just named are the same. But can you find similar cultural cohesion or at times syncretism? It does not mean the same. It doesn't mean that it was copied. It doesn't mean that it was stolen. It doesn't mean that it was borrowed. It just means that these people lived in close proximity to one another. They traded with one another. They were at war with one another. They intermarried. They had political ties. They shared wisdom and knowledge. But to say that each one of these societies or civilizations were the same, no historian would agree with you. It makes absolutely no sense to do that. I think I'm going to end it right here. Cultural memory. Key aspects of cultural memory in the ancient Near East include writing systems, epic literature, religion and mythology, art and architecture, laws and social norms, language and oral traditions. In conclusion, cultural memory in the ancient Near East was preserved and transmitted through various means, including writing systems, literature, religion, art, laws, and oral traditions. These elements help to shape the identity and values of the different civilizations that thrive in the region and continue to influence our understanding of human history today. We have to give credence to these things, people, when we're having these type of discussions. If not, we fail. And most of the scholars that you see bring this out, and I'm being nice, like Jababel and Shaka Almost, those particular scholars that we see, and there are many others, they don't talk about cultural memory. They don't talk about the actual wisdom literatures that are shared among all different societies. No one's saying or pointing their finger to those different wisdom literatures, but they have a cultural bias, a confirmation bias towards the Hebrew Bible and the Hebrew text. They have a bias, family. But we're going to see how this whole argument began, how it came about, and how it's being viewed today. Right? And if anybody can find that Aramaic text of the instructions of Amenemope that Shaka almost brought out and said it was possibly, Proverbs was possibly taken from there, from the source. Well, he'll say he didn't say it, but he read that the Oriental Institute in Ukraine and Crimea actually says this in their periodical. They actually say it. He just repeated it, but he didn't say it. He only used it to sort of bolster his claim, but he didn't say it. Right? Let's see where it starts here. Cultural memories refer to the collective memory and shared experiences of particular culture or society. These memories can be passed down through oral traditions. Again, literature, we read all that. The concept of truth can be subjective. It's very important and dependent on individuals' perspectives and experiences. In the context of cultural memories, what is considered true may vary depending on the cultural context and the interpretation of the cultural artifact. For example, a historical event may be remembered differently by different cultures, depending on their political affiliations, social status, and other factors. Similarly, a myth or legend may hold different meanings for different cultural groups, depending on their beliefs and cultural practices. In conclusion, once again, the existence of truth in cultural memories is a complex and multifaceted topic that involves various factors, including cultural context, interpretation, and individual perspectives. And I'm going to end it there, because what I want for you guys to do, come join me tomorrow. That's just a brief introduction. And we needed to have this in order to break this down so that we can have a clear understanding of what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about is the instructions, is Proverbs 22, 23, and 24 plagiarizing the instructions of Amenemope or Amenemope. Again, we're going to show you clearly that it is not. And if you don't have this introduction into this argument, you won't understand it. You'll take it on the surface value, like you see many of these others do, and say, "Hey, look, it sounds the same to me." So they had to steal it. They had to copy it. They had to plagiarize it. What a pauper's argument. A poor argument. There's no conclusive evidence to make that claim. We're going to get into it tomorrow. I hope there are many who can come back. Please like, share, and subscribe if you already haven't. Share this. Let people know that we're going to be on tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. sharp. We're going to be starting the full presentation into this. I'm going to put the notification out right up after this. So please click on it. We're going to be taking it at some points. Once I feel I'm well enough to do the presentation, to take on some questions and answers, do question and answer session, so we can actually discuss it and sort of bring some things out. But it's a lot of information. We're going to be doing it as a full lecture series. I'm tempted to just complete the entire lecture series first and do that. Shalom, family.